finally I can talk about it. Superman's back. Okay, I've said it. Now I can get on with everything else. Okay, that opening scene where you got Superman on the video camera. Superman's face was f***ed up, man. And then the scene itself was just stupid. I mean, you had some kid, and the kid was all like,
will you listen to my stupid question?
okay. And then it cut, and that was the end of it. Why? So I was trying to think, why did they even do that scene? And the only thing I can think of is that feeling you have where it kind of ends and you're left hanging. I think that's how the public in the universe feel after Superman's death. And now fear is creeping in. I don't think it translated very well. I mean, I'm really stretching for that. Otherwise, it's just shit. And then it gets on with the movie, and I was like, oh, wank. This might be as bad as BVS. So it then goes to Batman on top of a rooftop, trying to catch this criminal. And you're like, okay, cool, Batman's doing Batman-y stuff, and the criminal's trying to shoot him. Batman's doing these cool sort of dodges and weaves and disappearing behind shit, because that just looks awesome. And you're like, yeah, there's the Batman. That's the Batman we know and love. And then eventually he sort of grabs the criminal and ties him up and sort of hangs him off a building. And the criminal's like, why are you doing this? And I thought that was a bit of a stupid question, really, because you were committing crime. But it turns out that's not even why. The Batman then responds, fear. And the reason why he says that is because somehow he knows that fear attracts parademons. I mean, I suppose he could have realized, like, parademons are attracted by fear via his dream, but does that make Batman, like, psychic? Does he have visions that see the future? Because it does seem like it. Why? How? How does that happen? Why is that a thing? Batman wins the fight against the parademon. It's pretty cool how he kind of pins him to the wall, like Predator style. But then the parademon self-destructs, and there's blood splattered all over the wall, but then it leaves the pattern of these 3 cubes on the wall. How or why is that a thing? Why does that even happen? That doesn't even make any sense. Which brings me on to actually talk about Ben Affleck as Batman. I actually think he was really good in this. He was really good in BVS, and he's really good in this too. The issues I had with this Batman, though, are more to do with what the character actually did or didn't do. I mean, he doesn't really do detective work. The other thing I didn't like is Batman gets beat up quite a lot. Now, other than the very first scene when he's chasing after the criminal and he's super slick, he isn't really slick for pretty much the rest of the movie. One thing I did like about this Batman, though, is that he didn't go around just killing everything all the time. At least he tried not to. Because I'm more of a fan of the kind of Batman that doesn't cross that line or tries their very best not to cross that line. Because that's what makes him a hero, in my eyes. And that point is kind of emphasized in the movie when the Flash is worried about getting into a fight, he doesn't know what to do.
Batman, I've never been in combat. All I've ever done is push people. What do I do? What do I do?
Just save one.
And that one line means so much and is delivered so simply. And I think that's part of what trying to be good is all about. It's not easy, but it's simple. And once he saves one, then he just has to save another. And that one line kind of works like Thor's hammer in Avengers Age of Ultron, where they met Vision, and rather than have a whole discussion about should we trust him, should we not, he just picked up the hammer and everyone was like, oh, okay, great, and the story could move on. In this one, he didn't have to have a big discussion with Flash, he just told him do this one thing, because that's all that needed to be done. And that's why I really love that line. Now, I'm not going to go for everyone's introductions and for every scene of the movie. I'm just going through the bits that stuck with me, but I have to admit, Wonder Woman's introduction, that stuck with me. There's this bank robbery going on being committed by Game of Thrones Boltons. I suppose that's what happens when you get killed off, you then become a villain in the DC universe. But the bad guys have a bunch of hostages, and they just start opening fire with machine guns, and then you just see Wonder Woman just sort of speed through. Suddenly she's got super speed. I mean, she is supposed to be ridiculously awesome, but they don't really explain how her powers work. So I wonder if they just enhance as she needs it, you know, mostly for story convenience. But regardless, it looks really cool, and she just blocks every bullet while sort of doing these cool poses as she's blocking along the way. And then after she does that and takes out all the bad guys, then she's got to get rid of this bomb. But they said that the bomb could blow up 4 city blocks, so she flies up through the roof and then she throws it into the sky. But it doesn't go that high. I mean, I would have thought the explosion would have come back down and destroyed the building. I mean, explosions don't just go up. I'm sure they explode outwards in all directions. And there is more than a few butt shots, which I'm not really against, obviously, but it just felt a little unnecessary. And as I mentioned in the non-spoiler section, Wonder Woman was just awesome throughout this. She's an amazing actress. She has a smile that melts your heart. It's you're just like, oh my god, you're amazing. You should be a superhero, goddammit. There was also a bunch of stuff that was in the trailers that wasn't actually in the movie. And I can only imagine that was because Zack Snyder left for personal reasons and then Joss Whedon took over. And apparently Warner Brothers had told them to cut the movie down to 2 hours as well. Which honestly I'm kind of for. I don't mind the movie being longer than 2 hours. But if it's something like Batman v Superman, that is more than 2 hours of your f***ing life gone, and it was an extended edition, and that was even longer gone, and I was like, f*** you. I'm not getting into it. But generally though, you can see Joss Whedon's influence. The color palette of the whole movie is brighter. You can see shit, which is amazing. There's a bit more quips, very Whedon-y quips. I mean, I've been a fan of Joss Whedon since Buffy, because I was like the perfect age when that came out. So I've been hooked since then on pretty much everything except for Alien Resurrection. I mean, that did not work out well. But I feel like there are some really obvious parts that are Whedon-esque. I don't know Schneider as well, but he has a really cool visual style, which I think is showed off quite well. But either way, because the movie is kind of this joined movie or hybrid movie, I think the extended version might actually be really cool to watch. That being said, it should be mentioned, this movie is really CG. I mean, when I saw the trailers, it looked like it was so CG, if I watched it in some kind of 3D version, it would look wank. So I chose not to, and everyone still looked like they were on a green screen most of the time. Usually that doesn't bother me, but it kind of did a little bit here. Not all the time, but there were definitely more than a few moments. And the main issue with that, as with the villain, which I'll get to, is that it just doesn't feel like they're there. So it might look visibly awesome, but it doesn't feel it. So another big plot point of the movie was Superman's resurrection. And they had this big argument beforehand where Batman was mostly being a dick and the Flash brought some comic relief to it. But at the end of the day, Batman still had the same reasoning from the last movie. He doesn't quite say it, but he effectively says, "If there's even a 1% chance, blah, 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 blah." He doesn't quite say that, but the argument is effectively the same. And everybody else is like, what are you talking about? Did you not learn anything from the last movie? So I thought that bit was a bit stupid, to be honest, but they go along and do it. This is another thing. The end of the last movie doesn't count. You know, the little bits of dirt rising from the ground, rising from the grave. Because Superman could return. No, that was magic dirt. That's what that was. What they actually do is they go and chuck him in the vat that they made Doomsday out of. And Wonder Woman raises a good point. The last time you got an ogre from Lord of the Rings. Why is that not going to happen again? But Batman says, "We just gotta hope." So then they basically throw in the mother box, and boom, there you go, Superman's alive! To be fair, I think it was comic book logic. As long as something can generate ridiculous amounts of power, then it's basically magic that can do anything that you need for the story. I just don't think it played out too well on screen in this case. And that brings us to the next scene, which is maybe the best in the movie, and that's Justice League versus Superman. After Superman's resurrected, he's all confuddled and stuff, and he's going through those phases of adjusting to his powers and trying to figure out what's going on. And then Cyborg's body decides it has to kill Superman for about 5 seconds, and then turns his arm into a gun and fires a shot at him. And then suddenly, Cyborg can control it again. And it never happens again throughout the film. It felt so contrived just to get Superman to attack him. And to be honest, when Batman shows up and Superman sees him and he's like, "Oh, you gotta pay, motherfucker," and flies over to him and he's like, "Do you bleed?" Which I didn't mind because it was like he's still reliving the stuff he had just gone through and trying to put it in order. And that was enough. But the actual fight itself was awesome. You had Cyborg, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman trying to hold Superman still, and then Flash super speeding around the outside. And then as he's looking at Superman, Superman's eye starts tracking the Flash. And the Flash is like, "Holy shit!" It's so good. But then Batman is there and he says he's going to call in the big guns, and the big guns is Lois. And this is Lois's most important and involving role. She stands there and Superman calms down and they fly off together and spend a day with the Corn. That's it! That's Lois Lane throughout this whole thing. Now, I really like the Lois Lane character from the comics and from the cartoons. Mostly from the cartoons, because that's where I've seen her most. And if she lost Superman, don't be wrong, she would be distraught. But I get the impression that she would throw herself into her work in some war-torn part of the world or something like that. And then when she's the calming effect for Superman, she doesn't really do anything, she's just there. Basically, if they replaced her with a soothing tape of whale sounds, it would have been just as productive. So I'm really annoyed with how they've actually treated the character of Lois Lane in this. I think the actress is fine. It's just how the character's written. The character could just be way more interesting, and she is not. So now to talk about another character that was disappointing. Steppenwolf. You know, the main villain. Basically, he was just a big CG bad guy. Now, I know he had to be CG for the design and stuff, so I get that. But the problem was, it never really felt like he was there. I mean, he literally wasn't there for most of the film, though they do have a few good scenes with him. But what I mean by him not being there is because he's a CG character, there's no impact to anything he does. Even when he throws Wonder Woman against the wall and then she has some CG effect when she hits the wall, it looks cool, like it's visibly cool, but there's no impact of anything that happens. Though I'm not sure if you can blame the film for that, because I wonder if that's the case when it comes to having a CG bad guy, which makes me worry about Marvel's Thanos. One of the most disappointing things about him, though, is how he died. Basically, you didn't actually need the Justice League for this entire film. All you needed was Scarecrow. Because the second Steppenwolf started getting scared because Superman was kicking his ass, then they didn't have to do anything because all of his parademons, which for some reason they decided were insects, though I don't know why and they didn't explain, it turns out they sense fear and they sensed it in their leader, which meant he has never felt fear, and then they attack him and then he has to retreat or they kill him or both. How crap is that? And then it's the end. But the fight leading up to that bit, pretty damn good. The feels come when Superman turns up, but most importantly, Batman does this kind of face. It's the only way I can describe it. You'll have to watch it. This movie's worth it just for seeing Batman do that expression. At first I was slightly annoyed because I was like, Batman would never express himself that way. But if ever he would, that would be the time that he would. So I was pretty okay with it. It was pretty funny. Overall, I would say the movie is pretty good. It has some story issues and there's a lot of CG, which is distracting, and the villain is kind of lame. I think what this film concentrated on mostly was trying to get the viewer to be able to relate to the heroes. They kind of did that already with Wonder Woman, so they didn't have to focus too much on that in this movie, so she could just be awesome from the get-go. But everybody else, they helped you relate a little bit more, and I think that was a good thing to do, because we've got to like these heroes as they go on with their franchise. Anyway guys, those are my thoughts on the spoilers in the Justice League movie. I've only gone to see it once. Maybe if I went to see it again, I'd notice some things, I'd correct some things. Let me know what you guys thought about some of my points, if you have different views on some stuff, or if I made a mistake, like say I saw something one way but it was actually to do with something else. Yeah, let me know, because it'd be nice to be able to enjoy the movie a bit more by learning more about your points of view on it. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.